start by telling you a story. Not too long ago, in a land not so far away, there lived an it. It grew up in a close-knit town where it stayed through college. It was smart, it was creative, and among its friends, it was pretty darn popular. After graduation, some of its colleagues moved off to start their lives, but it stayed right where it was. I mean, it had a close-knit group of friends who had similar interests, who enjoyed the same foods, the same entertainment, and the same choices in fashion. So, as some of its colleagues started to move away, it found that it had some time in its social calendar and decided to meet someone new. It thought it might meet somebody and ask them on a date. This was really exciting. So it decided that it would plan the most perfect evening. It was so excited to bring its date to its favorite restaurant with all 17 flavors of wheatgrass juice and an all-vegan menu. It knew that not everyone eats vegan, but its thought was that if it could just get its date to read the menu, perhaps it would make a convert out of them. Sometime over the course of the 73 minutes that it decided that the dinner should take, the date reached across the table for the dessert fork just a little too soon. And it did them the favor of reminding them of the proper etiquette, just to avoid any embarrassment. Over dinner, they talked about its favorite conversational topics. And after dinner, it invited its date back to its house, where it had been busily stocking its DVR with its favorite made-for-TV movies. It was at this point in the evening that its date decided to cut the evening short. They had an early morning. So at lunch with friends the next day, it realized that this was not such an uncommon thing. I mean, all of their friends had had some really disastrous date experiences over the last few weeks. So what could this be? I mean, it had spent its entire day planning the perfect experience, down to making sure that the wheatgrass juice was just the perfect shade of minty green. So how had it become undateable, even with the best of all possible intentions? All right, so burned by their efforts to bring new people in, it and its friends decided that it was okay that their society was shrinking a little bit. I mean, they had each other, and they thought that the people who moved off would probably come back when they were more mature, like really excited about nostalgia and the finer things in life. So they focused on preserving their culture. And soon they began to compete with each other over who had the puffiest sleeves, or who had the most fluffy yeast balls to eat. And it's in this way that, disconnected with the world that had moved on without them, they started to behave a lot less like a community and more like individuals struggling in their quest for the best. So it's here that we find ourselves as artists. As classical musicians ourselves, what we feel is that we've spent so much time taking something that used to be an essential part of life, a popular form of entertainment, and putting in this little glass box as a museum piece for us to look at. It's something interesting that happens when you think about competing with one another for the privilege of performing your music. We began to think about reproducing perfect experiences rather than creating situations that make it easy for people to come into our art. I mean, think about this. It's no wonder we're undateable. We ask people to come into our house. We tell them to sit in our chairs. We tell them what we're going to play. And if they don't like it, we tell them they should read about it in the program notes. If they do like it, we tell them they should clap, but not quite yet. And it's no wonder that the latest classical music segmentation study says that about 3.8% of the American population is what you would call highly educated classical music lovers. These are people who know all 17 flavors of wheatgrass really, really well. If you look at the NEA's numbers on how many people made music in the last year, it's about 3%. So on the one hand, it means that a lot of the people listening are participating. On the other hand, it means that we're kind of playing to ourselves and a few of our closest friends. And we're also competing with each other really hard to do that. So we'd like to offer a bit of an alternative here. What if, instead of competing with each other for an increasingly small part of the pie, we were to work together to build outwards? And what if, instead of thinking really hard about bringing people in through how we talk about what we do, or what ads we place, or what photos we take of ourselves, We were to let the people around us help inform and shape what it is that we do, the work itself. Woo!
About a year and a half ago, Melissa and I had the pleasure of taking a really interesting meeting where we were handed an unusual business card. And this gentleman's card, his corporate title said, Director of Experience Design. So cool, right? I thought it was amazing, and it spawned some really interesting conversations between Melissa and I, and we thought about not only what that means, but the responsibility it implies. Usually when we're programming a concert, we just think about what pieces we're going to play, or if we can give the series a catchy title. But this is different. We're all in the business of creating experiences that serve a purpose in our cultural community. When we start thinking about that element of service from the get-go, there's a shift in how you approach programming. Curatorial work is always important, but how people engage with the material you choose is as important as the material itself. All we need to get started down this path of experience design is a little fourth grade math. So step one, figure out what interests you. I don't mean what composers you like to play or if there's an era of music that interests you entirely. I mean what really interests you about it. What got you to start down this often difficult path of study? What helps you connect to your art on a visceral level? Before you knew what form or theory or history was, what pulled at you and said there's something there about what you choose to do? Step two, figure out what interests your audience. To do that, you have to be audience. You have to go out, you have to go to other people's concerts, dance performances, God forbid, pop concerts, read books, see movies, see what is successful in our cultural marketplace, and understand and appreciate that there's an abundance mentality, that there are things that work, and we need to figure out what those things are. Step three, find that intersection, that overlapping area between what you are inherently passionate about and what you already see audiences are drawn to. And that is going to be your area of greatest success. If your group is to function as a large service organization, creating, enriching, and entertaining events for a larger public, we have to figure out how to capitalize on this shared territory. One of our strategies in Fifth House Ensemble is to work through modes of collaboration. If we collaborate with artists of different genres, we immediately have to take into account this audience experience from the start, because we have to entice people from other disciplines to sign on to work with us in the first place. And if they don't have that shared vision of our final product, it's not going to work. So already we're thinking about how to appeal to audiences that aren't simply your traditional audiences that will come no matter what. One of our concerts this year, we did a series called The Weaver's Tales, which basically was a mashup of Grimm's fairy tales combined with live music and storytelling through pantomime theater. It was a really fun project for all of us, and I'd like to share a little clip with you in a second. The clip is going to be from our second show, which is called Of Cinderella and the Devil, and allowed us to program Beethoven's Septet, Elliott Carter's Sonata for Flute, Oboe, Cello, and Harpsichord, and a cover of British rock pop group Muse in the same program. Now this concert would not work under the standard paradigm, but because we were working through this collaborative mentality, and because we had this shared vehicle of narration, each element of these pieces, the natural charm and joy of each of them, was made apparent to our audiences. So let's watch these two short clips. I think it's interesting that these two pieces, which are considered to be so drastically different, can function so well together in the same show. This can be seen as a type of evolution. You can take what you love and find how it intersects with other collective passions, art, history, food, all the things that we enjoy, and figure out how to make that product that is going to be successful in the marketplace. The results are palpable. I'm going to run just a little bit of footage while I keep talking of some audiences from our most recent concert Tuesday night. And these are the faces that we love to see. They're a little bit hard to see right now. But I want to point out is that there isn't necessarily this traditional symphonic audience membership that you see curiosity, amazement, amusement. That's exciting. We love to see these types of faces in our audience. As one of our team members said, we understand inherently that if we're looking at a hologram and there are two different people seeing it from different sides, they will see it differently. This neither invalidates the art or that person's perspective. We need to have that same mentality for our audiences in music. I don't care if everybody who comes to our concerts sees the exact same thing. What I care about is they find a way to engage and that they see something that is compelling to them. If we insist on one image, one experience from our audiences, we will continually fail to thrive. The artistic challenge is clear. We have to have deeper conversations with ourselves and each other, the music, and everything else, so we can figure out how to make our best work without gimmicks. If we have a thoughtful understanding of ourselves and an open mind to learn from others, enjoying the growth that only another point of view can bring, we are ready for a great date.
Yeah.
I'm number 3. What we do on stage, we also can do in the classroom for younger kids. Using Adam's idea of the Venn diagram, we look for the intersection of what interests the students and what we do. But sometimes there is no intersection. So then it's up to us to create that common ground. And that's where arts integration comes into play. Now, this idea is simple and it's not new. By layering arts education on top of core curriculum, you can enhance what students are already learning, as well as providing that initial point of contact into an art form that might otherwise be so unfamiliar to them that they just completely disengage right from the start. And for many of us, both as art lovers and arts makers, our first meaningful exposure to the arts came from a wonderful arts teacher in the school setting. And recently, in a recent poll, about 38% of adults, only 38% of adults ages 18 to 24 reported having had any music education in school. This is down a third from the 80s. And I'm sure that you understand that with budgets being the way they are in schools these days, this downward trend is very likely to continue. So that means that right off the bat, 62% of adults have no music education background coming out of school. And there's an idea that if something is an add-on to curriculum, it can also be subtracted. So like music education is music plus education. So our job is to make it part of the essential knowledge that students are required to learn, and in doing so, give students a meaningful way to relate to the art.
It's different type of music than I usually listen to every day or whatever. And I learned a lot, and like stuff. I got to research and all that other stuff about things I really didn't know about. Because it was like a bigger background about music that I really didn't know about. That's what made it interesting to me to listen to.
This also works both ways. For students who have trouble connecting to their academic work, music can be a new entry point into that. And we often hear from teachers that students who sit in class totally unengaged, totally uninterested, perk up when arts is brought into the curriculum and they're actually participating. And finally, like all the very best art, sometimes the most worthwhile results are the ones that you never set out to get. In our residencies, students have to do a final project, and that final project involves presentation. And usually that involves public speaking. Now, we knew that students had little to no exposure to classical music when we went into the schools. What we didn't realize was that students also had little to no experience speaking publicly. So we were forced to incorporate public speaking practice into the residencies. As a result of that, students not only became more self-confident with what they were presenting for their project, but they suddenly became more self-confident in class. They were engaged more, they were participating more, and they were engaged more in their school community. And because this was a shared experience that they were participating in as a class, as a group, students created their own atmosphere of support and cooperation. And if that's not a compelling rationale for arts education, I don't know what is.
Like how the way you talk, like you got inhale, exhale stuff, the way you talk, and like when you gotta breathe in for your voice to be loud, and how you gotta keep your eye contact with the audience, and that could help me in life, because you go to English class and stuff, and like when you like finna do a project, you gotta get up and talk to a class that can help you.
By bringing music into the classroom through arts integration, we aim to serve many goals. We want to enrich the academic material that students are already going to be required to learn. We want to teach students about our art form because we love it and it's really important to us. And we want to help the art form survive by introducing it to the next generation of arts lovers.
What was one of the biggest things, or the thing that like stuck out in your head the most during the time of Fifth House?
Like the music when you guys played, like it just spoke to me. Like it was like really beautiful. Like yeah, like I never heard of that before, but like when you guys played it, like it was so like beautiful and generous. Yeah, like I never like experienced that before.
So what we're hoping to communicate today is that the arts really needs two things to survive. It needs somebody to make it and somebody else to enjoy it. We're not talking about dumbing things down. We're just talking about finding a little patch of common ground and standing there together for a little while. We also really hope to appeal to the generosity that exists within each of you who have chosen the arts as your vocation. There really is an abundance of opportunity out there. The scarcity that we feel only happens when we travel those routes that are the most traditional, the most well-worn, and therefore the most scarce. We're trained as artists to be competitive. When we're in school, that serves us really well. It pushes us to succeed. When we're in the marketplace, it does nothing to bring in new audiences. What we have to consider is that what we're doing is a service. We're creating something beautiful and something essential and something that is designed to be inspirational to others. And if we do that, we'll never go wrong. So as classical musicians, we spend hours of a day focusing on perfection rather than connection. And that is why we're having such trouble with new relationships. But maybe with just a little shift in thinking, the it might be able to find its perfect mate.